YouTube community, Beach Boys, Smile fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens. We are joined today by Jenny Jamball, Beach Boys fan extraordinaire from Australia. Hey, Jenny, how's it going?
Hi, Giggens. Nice to see ya.
Good to see you. So, as you know, we were doing this whole month of Smile because as this
Yeah.
video has come out, we're in the month of May 2023. All these videos have come out about Smile, topic videos. The review will come out soon. And I really wanted to talk to you about Smile and your experience with it and kind of what your perception of the album is, like how you rate it among their other records and where you think it could have gone if they continued that trend or if it came out in general. So, my opening thoughts are, what are your thoughts generally on the Smile album? Do you like it? What would you change about it if you could change anything? Just overall, what's Smile for you?
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy the album, but I definitely feel like there's a lot of there's just so much mystery around it and so much background stories and information that people just get so caught up in. And it kind of, you know, puts a shadow over the actual album itself because there's all this lore behind it that just kind of I think it just builds it up into something that it's not in many ways. It's like this mystery, I really enjoy the album. I think it's great. But I think it's something that, if it was released when it was meant to be released, if it was one of those things that was just meant to come out, I don't think it would have been well received at that time. I don't think it would have been something that, people would have been like, oh, wow, this is great. I just would have been like, this is weird.
Yeah,
Because it
yeah,
is. And that's why I enjoy it. But I think what gives it so much joy is the context that I have behind it already. So I know, I've listened to all the Beach Boys albums. I know them as people. I feel like I know them. And I enjoy their music for what it is. But without having that context in that time, with that album being released, it would just not make sense, if that makes sense.
absolutely. That's such an interesting point to make. Is like you're right. Smile is about the lore, about the myth, about the legend of the album. I'd say more so than the music itself, which is exactly what you said. Like
Yeah.
when people talk about Smile, like I remember when I was a kid learning about it, you learned about the album, but not ever hearing the music. It was hard to hear the
Yeah.
music. So that's fascinating because I feel like for a lot of people, that's the whole draw of the record is like the mystery behind it. But like, it's funny when you like look into it, they were just making an album. It wasn't like some big
Yeah.
mystery thing. It was like they're just making the
Exactly.
next record. So like, um, but you make a good point about contextualizing it. Like, we both grew up in the '90s and beyond, long after this album was made and forgotten about or put into the legend of the Beach Boys story. But like, you're right. If you had been 15, 16 years old and you were buying Help Me Rhonda and California Girls and, Barbara Ann, those singles, and then you get to this album only a handful of months later, it
Yeah.
would have been a trip. Like Pet Sounds was daring enough as it was.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
This would have been received like, what is this music? I'm sure if you were
Yeah.
older, you would have loved it. But when you're 15 and you love California Girls, you want more of that. So like,
Exactly.
so you make a good point about that. If it actually had come out, like where do you think it would have charted for itself? Because Pet Sounds was number 10 on the charts in America,
Yeah.
whereas their other records have been like number one, two, three, four. They were hits, and Capitol saw number 10 as a failure. That's why they put out that best of album. How do you think it would
Yeah.
have done on the charts in America? I feel like everywhere else would have been like, "This is great." Wow, what do you think
Yeah.
America would have thought of it?
It would have been catastrophic. That's what I think.
Yeah,
Because I think at that stage, the Beach Boys were very I mean, coming from Australia, I see the Beach Boys as very Americana, very cars and girls and beaches and whatever. So I think for something like that to come out, it would just be no.
yeah,
And it's definitely it would just be really interesting to speak to someone that was, around during that time to kind of give more context to it because it just seems so far out because, we as, newer fans, I guess, we weren't really around when these albums were coming out. We have so many different things to choose from. We
right.
can start at the start or start at the end, wherever you want to go. But for there, you're literally waiting, oh, the Beach Boys are bringing out a new record. Wow, you're so excited about it. And then to hear that, it's like, what the heck? What is this?
I know, and
Yeah.
like it's just so weird to think that like, Good Vibrations was their best-selling single at that time when it came out. It was a number one hit.
Mhm.
It changed everything for them. It basically reversed Capitol's idea of being like, oh, I guess they can make new music and have it sell really well. Like this song is humongously popular. So like
Yeah.
when it comes to Smile in terms of like how they would have presented it live, like had it come out, they eventually did do some of these songs live in the late 60s, early 70s when they got like repurposed for other albums. But like, can you imagine like a 1967 Beach Boys going out there and playing like Barnyard or like Surf's Up in 1967 live? Like, can you see them pulling that off?
I mean, it's the Beach Boys. They can pull off anything. So yes, I
Hey,
can imagine it, but I don't know if anyone would be there to watch it.
yeah, I know.
Like I just it's so ahead of its time in many ways. Like I just listened to it now before, jumping on this call with you and like being outside, like listening to this music. I'm like, this is like it's far out. Like it's just when you think about it as a whole, like where it was in their timeline as a band, it's really far out. Like it really is. So I just it shocks me in the best way, in the best way.
It's incredible because like it's the same guy who like only a few years earlier wrote Surf Safari. I mean, there's only like a 4 or 5 year difference between that and Surf's Up. It's like the
Yeah.
Beatles doing Love Me Do and then Revolver.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable how fast they grew. So like when it comes to the record itself, like what are some of your favorite moments on it? What are some of your favorite songs?
It's really hard to choose what a favorite song is for me from this album because it changes every time I listen to it. I definitely love Our Prayer. That's like one of my favorite songs from the entire album. Like I love that song so much. I think it's so beautiful and it's so peaceful and it's just amazing. I love that song.
Yeah,
Vegetables or Vegetables, whatever you want to call it. I love that song too. Um, Wonderful, I think is the other one.
yeah.
Wonderful. I love that song so much. It's just when you listen to it, it's like I think it's hard to pick a song because I don't see the album as like singular pieces. I see it as a whole. So it's really
Right.
hard for me to like pick it apart and be like, this is the standout for me. The album itself is the standout. Like that is
Ooh.
that is it. It's not like, oh, this song is the only one I like. Like, no, like you need to listen to it from start to finish and really listen.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's one of those sit down and listen albums for sure. Um,
Hmm.
so over the course of the next handful of albums, they kind of picked and chose or choose random Smile tracks to put on other albums. What are your thoughts about that? Should they have done that, or should they have left Smile where it was, or do you think the songs they picked worked well with the new albums they came out with, like Essence and Our Prayer on 2020? Of course, Surf's
Yeah.
Up coming out eventually. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that worked really well for them because as we kind of discussed at the start, like where they were at that point, it wasn't like we weren't ready for it, or not we, but like people of that time weren't ready. So
Humans,
it was
Earthlings.
just like little tastes of the album just thrown in between other records, I think was the way to kind of introduce it. So I think that was really clever on their part, whether it was intentional or not. Maybe they were just lazy and like, we can't think of any other songs and put this on there. I don't know. But I think it was intentional or not, I think it was a really good way to do it because it was just the world wasn't ready. I don't know if we're ready now, to be
I,
honest, but
I know it's
yeah,
still such a far out album. Like when you put it on, it's from a different dimension. It doesn't exist in any
yeah,
kind of place. It's just Smile. It sounds like nothing else, and nothing else will
mhm,
ever sound like it. Um,
absolutely.
that being said, like if Smile had come out as Beach Boys fans, we love playing the what if game.
Yeah.
The kind of pressure that Brian put on himself to make those albums as
Mhm.
special as he did, especially with Pet Sounds, and then again with almost completing Smile. If he finished it and it came out, what do you think would have happened next to Brian? Would he have burnt himself out, or would he have topped Smile? Would he have done something else? Like, if you would play the what if game, what do you think would have happened in his story or their story?
I think that would have been it. I don't think anything else would have come from it. Like I think any of the other like amazing albums that we have now, I just feel like they just wouldn't have happened
Right.
because in my mind, I feel like it was such a strange album that it wouldn't be something that would be appreciated at the time. So people would see this and be like, this is not, we don't like this. And then they wouldn't book shows and whatever. Like that's what I think, which I think is sad. I don't want that to be true, but I feel
Yeah.
like it would have been true at
Yeah.
that time. And possibly it may have been like one of those things with more hindsight and more context. It would have been appreciated within time like it is now. It's appreciated now because we have the context behind it. If we don't
Yeah.
have all that knowledge that we have, it just doesn't make as much sense. So I think it would have been a lot of pressure for Brian. Like I think knowing how he feels about his music and like the effort that he puts into it, like having that released and in my mind, I think negative feedback to it, that would have really hurt him. I don't think he would have been happy to, continue making music. He would feel sad. Like it would suck. And I can understand that you put yourself out there and then people just like crap all over it. It's not good. It's not nice. And for someone
Yeah.
like him that so much like of his heart and soul into music, like I just don't see it ending well if that's the way the timeline played out.
And it's interesting you mentioned that because like that would happen to him with the Friends album. Like he put his heart and soul into that album too, and it went absolutely
Mhm.
nowhere. No one bought that album. Their
I
tour,
don't get it.
like, yeah, like all the shows got canceled. Like that was an awful time for them, and he put his heart and soul into that
Mhm.
thing. So it's like it must have been weird to like have had so much success and be on top of the world, and people respected you so much, and then you get to like good vibrations, and you're just on cloud nine. Like no one can touch you at that point.
Yeah.
And to put so much effort into a record and have it not come out, it's like I can't even imagine what that would feel like. Imagine if we never got Pet Sounds because he stopped near the end.
Yeah.
He was like, "Nah, I don't want to finish Caroline, no," or "I don't want to finish. Nah, just leave it." Like it's almost like robbing the world of incredible music. But where do you think the record stands in terms of their discography? Like if it did come out, didn't come out, whatever. Like we all consider Smile a thing that happened in 67, 66.
Yeah.
Where is it? Like, is it in your top five? Is it in your top 10? How do you rank it in terms of your albums?
It's not in my top five. Um, it is in my top 10, I would say, but it's not one of those albums that I'm like, oh, I want to listen to this today. Like, it's not like that. And that's not because it's not good. It's just that I think that we're in a time with music where you know, music is everywhere. Like you go to the mall, you go to the grocery store, music is playing like always, always, always. It's everywhere. So you're not really sitting down and listening to music like you would have done, in the past. So if I'm going to listen to Smile, I'm listening to it. I'm not just like putting it on and like, oh, I'm going about my day. No, I'm going to sit, I'm going to listen and appreciate it. And that's all I'm focusing on.
Yeah,
So that's why it's not in my top five because, being in this lifestyle that we're in now, I don't have the time to sit and dedicate that time to listen to it, even though I wish I could, but we're busy. We've got things to do. So, Smile is an experience. It's not just something you decide, oh, I'm just going to put it on. It's like you put the time aside, you listen to it, you enjoy it, you think about it. What a trip. So yeah, it's that's why, because it's not that it's not a good album, because it's great,
yeah,
but it's not like some of the earlier stuff, you can just chuck on one of their songs, like, oh, this is fun. Like,
right.
you don't need to put that much time into it. But I mean, that being said, there's a lot of songs on there that are really, wonderful on their own, just to hear standalone. Like they're really nice, like, um, I know I've told you this before, but some other people may not know this, but like, working as an educator, I would use a lot of the songs from this album in my curriculum, in my program. I would use some of these songs from this album in particular because they're so layered and they're just really nice to like play because people can, or little people, the children can really like pick them apart and like appreciate them for what they are because they don't have that mentality that we have where we're rush, 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 rush. They can sit and be like, oh, that sounds a bit funny. Oh, that's a bit weird, and have these conversations about it, which is really fun. Like I enjoy that.
Yeah.
So it could be a top five, but it's just you need to focus on it. Like it's not just for fun, it's a sit and listen kind of album.
It's interesting you say that too, because like I know you got introduced to a lot of this more obscure Beach Boy stuff as a kid. You grew up with a lot of this stuff early on, whereas I didn't hear
Mm.
Smile until I was in high school. So like, do you remember hearing it as a kid back in the day? And like, Do you remember any initial reactions? Was it something you gravitated towards, or was it something you were like, "Oh, that's cool, but I'd rather hear Surfing USA or something"? Like, what was your thought about it as a kid?
I mean, I really liked it because, like the way that I grew up and the way my family was, like when we put on music, it was something that you would listen to. It wasn't just like background noise. It was like, we're going to listen to this record from start to finish. We're just going to listen to it. So like, I thought it was really far out. And I was really big on like, the album art. Like that stuff I really loved as a kid. So like, like look at that. That's amazing. It's so cool. Like for a kid,
It's
it's like,
iconic. Yeah,
yeah, it's like, wow, look at that. So that's what I was really drawn to it. I was like, this is really cool. Like, put that on, play that again. That's really
yeah,
fun. But it was a bit strange, I guess, hearing it for the first few times because it just wasn't what I was used to.
yeah,
Because as a kid, I really loved like the early stuff, and I still do. I love that like surf sound,
yep.
but like hearing that and then that, like this, I'm like, what? What's happening? But I still liked it because I was like, it's cool. Like, they're just doing their thing, and I thought it was great. Yeah.
I know that feeling so much because like my brother had a cassette tape of this '80s greatest hits called "Made in USA," and it was the only place that we had heroes and villains was on that cassette tape. And I forget the sequencing, but it had something paired up. It was heroes and villains was sandwiched in between like I think two surf songs or something. It was a very weird placement
Mm.
for it, and it was the only place that we had that song. So that was my only introduction to Smile for years was that one song. I remember it scaring the hell out of me because it's such a weird song. Like
It is
the
weird.
movements in it are strange. And as a grown up now and like aware of the charts and how they work and contextualizing things and reading about the 60s music scene and all that kind of stuff, putting that out as a single, it doesn't make any sense. It's the most unsingle worthy track you can think of, but I guess it would be the most kind of single moment on Smile, unless you count like Wonderful, I think would be a cool track, or
Yeah.
um, I think there was a proposed idea that Vegetables would be a single, which is awesome, an awful idea. Great
Yeah,
song,
I know.
not a single. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, if you were to introduce someone, a brand new Beach Boys fan, they're getting into music with the Beach Boys and they're deep diving, would you show them Smile or Smiley Smile?
I would show them a smiley smile. Not for any other reason other than the fact that it's just I think it's a lot for someone that's just like getting in to the band to hear this. It's just kind of like it just feels a bit strange. And I think you need to have a lot of background support, knowledge, all of that before you can really appreciate it. Like you can listen to it and think, well, this is a weird album, but like to actually like it, you need to have a little bit more context to it. So I think Smiley Smile would be my first pick. And then when you're ready, tackle Smile.
I agree 100%. Like, because that's the way I went too. So I'm a little biased, I suppose. But like, Smiley Smile is more digestible, but I also think it's even weirder, which is kind of a weird,
Yeah, it is.
like, it's a funky album. But I think it helps. One, that it's more readily available. Well, it was more readily available. Now Smile, you can stream it on Spotify, so it's easy to get to now. But back in the day, when Smile was a bootleg, it was hard, it was tricky to get a hold of, and you would have to rely on fan mixes or bootlegs and see what people constructed it as. So it was never really a thing that was like set, whereas Smiley Smile, you can buy the record and this is what it is. So
Hmm.
I agree. I would show off Smiley Smile first and then go backwards, but all right, Jenny. So for our last question here, we know that the music scene, the people in the music industry loved Pet Sounds when it came out. Like the Beatles were humongous fans of Pet Sounds, and that inspired them to make Sgt. Pepper. So even if the fans weren't as cool into the record as maybe the record company or the band themselves wanted them to be, the music scene was. So if Smile had come out, what do you think it would have done for other artists? Like, do you think they would have really into it, be like, "Whoa, we got to catch up. This guy's really far ahead," or do you think they would have been like, "All right, he's too far ahead. We can stay back a little bit," or do you think it would have been a back and forth, specifically with the Beatles? Do you think they would have been like, "Holy crap! Like, he did it again"?
Oh yeah, I for sure think that like people who are into music and musical artists that were popular at the time would have really appreciated the album. Like I think that that's the thing. Like it's you can't like if you're a new fan listening to this album, it's like you don't you know what I mean? Like it's not going to make any sense to you because you don't understand it. But like people that understand, that have that knowledge, that have that, you know, they know about music and they know what's good and how to make something like this, they would appreciate it because they know the time and the effort and like the heart and the soul and everything that goes into making this. It's not just like, sit down at the piano and play a couple of keys and chuck a couple of words together. This is like really like intensive stuff. So I definitely feel that, people popular at the time or anyone musically inclined that has that knowledge would have 100% appreciated this album and loved it. Absolutely loved it. Like we all do now.
It's kind of wild to think because like if it had come out, it would have come out a month or two before Sergeant Pepper did. So like Pepper was basically done by that point anyway. So they would have been neck and neck with each other. But like, can you imagine where like both of those albums came out in the same year and like the Beatles were like, oh, we did it, we made Sergeant Pepper the best album ever made, and someone's like, here, put this on and Smile. They're like, "Grr!" Like I wonder what. Who knows if we ever would have gotten the White Album or Abbey Road? Like their trajectory may have changed completely too. It's
Absolutely.
it's a what if game with the Beach Boys, which is kind of fun, but also extremely frustrating at the same time because
It
it's
is.
like it could have been, but what we got was cool. So like things worked out the way they were supposed to. Because
Absolutely.
if Smile came out, we would have never gotten Holland or
That's true.
Sunflower or the Surf's
And
Up
they're some
album.
of the best
So
albums. Some of the
e-
best albums right there.
exactly. So
Mm.
it was supposed to not come out. Like, their their story was supposed to go downhill in America for a little bit there, and then come back to their rise
Yeah.
to power. But Jenny, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk about this album and the surrounding story about it. It's been really cool hearing your thoughts. And if anybody's watching Jenny Jamball on Instagram, she posts great records. Give her a follow. But Jenny, any final words?
Listen to Smile. But listen to all the other albums first, then listen to Smile. That's the
I agree.
those are my
Yeah, don't start with Smile. No, you have
and
to earn Smile.
it's
Yeah,
been wonderful chatting. I appreciate the opportunity and the time that you've given. It's been really great. Yeah.
always.
And
Thanks so much,
T-shirt
Jenny.
twins. Love it. T-shirt twins.
T-shirt twins. Um, all right, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.
All right. Bye.